Hello, everyone. Hi. Good afternoon. How are you all? It's great to be here with you, and I hope I hope everything's going all right with this. Yes, there we are. I think I'm live. So anyway, great to see you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about fiction, which is different to what I'm often talking about in this group, and indeed what this group was set up for. But it's great to be able to do this, and the wonderful thing about talking to women and women writers is that everybody is so open to so many things. So I hope you're all open to thinking about fiction writing. So if you don't know me, I'm Lucy McCARRAHER. I'm the founder of Rethink Press. I'm the founder of the Business Book Awards and also the founder of a book writing app called Book Magic, which is about to hit the world. And you probably mostly know me for coaching, publishing, talking about writing business or self-development. Anyway, definitely non-fiction books. But what you may not know is that I am also an author of 3 novels, and I've written a book called How to Write Fiction Without the Fuss. And really, fiction is my not at all guilty secret. It's what I love to read, it's what I love to write. And last year, I took a group of 10 amazing women through a year's worth of thinking about composting, planning, and writing their first novels. So that is my first time female fiction program. And it was absolutely one of the most enjoyable things I did last year. And I think that everybody who was on the program really enjoyed it too. So today I'm just going to talk about writing fiction, how you can write fiction, how it's maybe something that you've thought about before, but not known where to start, and perhaps thought it was really a lot more difficult than maybe writing a business book or a non-fiction book. So I want to just show you today that actually it's not, and it's something that you could absolutely do. So I am going to share my screen and go through some slides with you. So here we go. Let's hope this is going to work. Screen sharing, too many screens up here. Now I need to go to slideshow from beginning. Okay, so hopefully you can now see my slides, and we are going to talk about how to write fiction without the fuss. So, what I want to go through today is why fiction writing, why writing fiction is actually really good for you in all sorts of ways. I'll tell you about my fiction journey and how it started off with a bit of a disaster, but then had some good outcomes. I'll tell you about the typical mistakes that first-time fiction authors make so that you can avoid those. And I'll tell you how to get started on your novel the right way, and the things that you really need to do at the beginning to make sure that your novel will get going, and you'll write it properly and in the easiest way possible. And also how to make sure you finish the story, because I have a feeling that, well, much like any other book, that a lot of people start novels and don't finish them. But actually, you really, it can be done. You should finish your story. If you start one and you have a great story, then absolutely make sure you finish it. And I'll tell you just, the basics of ways to get your fiction published, because you can get fiction published. It's not impossible. There are different ways you can do it. But, if you've written a great story, a great novel, then you should get it out there. There will be people who want to read it and potentially publishers who want to publish it. So, why is writing fiction good for you? Well, there's really quite a variety of reasons. And the first one is, quite apart from anything else, it's really good for your brain. It does all sorts of positive things. Keeps you fit and active neurologically speaking. And also better writing, I have always said, means better thinking. If you can express something in words, in sentences, in paragraphs, you can if you can tell a long story, the size, something the size of a novel is quite a big piece of work, but it really, really makes your brain work in the most positive ways, and actually in the most enjoyable ways as well. It really gives you fantastic mental stimulation. And if you're running a business, if you've written your non-fiction, your business or self-development book, you'll know that really gets your thought processes going. But actually, it's really good to do other things as well, and do other types of writing, other types of thinking. So writing fiction is really good for your cognition, and it's also said to ward off mental decay as well. So if you're getting a bit older and you're worried about things falling apart up there, then writing a novel could be an absolutely great thing to keep you active. Also, when you're writing a novel, you are very much using your conscious, but actually your subconscious works really hard. If you've worked with me on writing your non-fiction book, you will know that I'm very keen on you using your subconscious to do a lot of the work for you. But when you're writing fiction, you use your subconscious even more, and it's amazing how links can be made, ideas can surface, and using that connection between your conscious and your subconscious is also very good for you neurologically. It's also all sorts of things that you do while you're writing your novel. I mean, this possibly also too, from writing other books, if you have non-fiction books, is that the research is really interesting. The learning you create for yourself, the learning journey is brilliant. When you're writing fiction, there's all sorts of things that you need to research that are not part of your business necessarily at all. All kind of interesting little areas you can go down and learn about and learn more about, and it's really positive for you in kind of spreading your thoughts and your thought processes through the research you do, and the just the learning about your subject matter and your characters that are part of it. You also need to have an overview. You need to have vision, and you also need to work in extreme detail. And having both those elements that you're working on over a piece of writing that's normally around 80 to 90,000 words gives you an awful lot of brain exercise. And you really will find that you're thinking in more dynamic and more interesting ways, because you have this big picture, you have a big picture of your whole story, you have your chapters, you have your plots and subplots, and then you've got very detailed work to do as well in the writing. And that really makes you, really, really is a piece of self-development. And did I just finish that page? I guess I did, yes. So those are the things that make writing fiction really good for you, brain-wise, thought-wise, intellectually. It's very, very positive work that you do there. It's also good for your mental health, for how you feel. So writing is fun. Writing fiction is fun. It's, to be honest, it's a lot more fun. I mean, writing non-fiction can also, of course, be enjoyable and fun, but writing fiction is really fun. Creating characters, creating stories, making relationships, seeing how they play out, creating events. And writing fiction is associated with dopamine release. So it literally, writing fiction makes you happy. So I really do recommend it on that basis. I mean, when you're writing a novel, and you kind of go away into the real world and you come back to it, and you open up your manuscript, and it's kind of like having a fantastic Netflix series kind of unfolding in front of you, and it's kind of created by you, but also you feel that it's just out there happening, and it's just a really, really great thing to be doing. It's also, it can also be therapeutic as well, writing fiction, because often you will find yourself when you're writing fiction processing events that have happened to you in your life, and you can parcel them out among your characters. You don't have to be there reliving them yourself, but it's a really interesting way that you can, I mean, of course, you will bring in your own life experience, life events, relationships, all sorts of things. But you can do this, you know, you do it creatively, you turn it into something else that is not your actual experience. And it really helps process things, should you need to process things, but also it, you know, it gives you different views of events that have happened, of people that you've interacted with through your characters as well. So being creative, writing creatively about your own experience to some extent is also really, really good for you. And it's well known that writing characters, writing for different characters, is actually something that creates empathy and understanding. So you know you're writing from different points of view. I mean, obviously, a lot of fiction writing, most creative writing is about conflict and resolution, relationships, misunderstandings as well as understandings. And you know, if you write things from different people's points of view, it's amazing how you start to understand different points of view, even you know your unattractive characters, your villains, or you know you create a kind of you know a basis for them, an understanding of how other people work. So it's very good for you in that sort of way as well. And finally, fiction, as we all know, is great escapism and entertainment. And it doesn't have to be, you know, fiction doesn't have to be out there in other people's books, in, you know, on TV, in the cinema, wherever, in the theatre. It can be, when you're creating it yourself, it's even better kind of escapism and entertainment. And you'll find that when you're writing a novel, you kind of live in two worlds at once, and it's really, really positive and fun. And you know you can always go off to the other place where you know different things are happening, and stay involved with your characters. The only Sometimes the only bad thing about writing a novel is just like when you've read a good book, the sad thing is ending it and you realize that you know you have to sort of stop spending that time with those characters and in that world you've created. But while you're writing it, it's fantastic. And anyway, then you just need to write the next one. So that's and also self-confidence is a real benefit of writing fiction too. I'm sure if you've written a non-fiction book, it built your self-confidence. It built it around, you know, what you were writing about, perhaps your business, your process, whatever you do. And being a published author gave you great self-confidence. But actually, writing fiction gives you a whole load of confidence as well, because often I think, especially if you know we're talking about you writing your first novel, you'll find that that just being able to do it, and you know you will be able to do it, that will give you confidence as you move through the process. You will become more confident about your abilities, and being able to do this extra other thing, this skill will develop for you. And also, writing fiction, although that might seem strange, it is in fact very good for all the other things that you do in life, running a business, working with clients. It gives you more transferable skills. So I think we all know that storytelling is a really important part of running whatever you do, whatever business, whatever work you do. Being able to sell in terms of storytelling, being able to tell stories about your clients, about case studies, about your own work. That transfers. When you can write stories in fiction, you can write even better stories than you've told before in non-fiction. It's also, you know, being able to creatively write is, of course, very good for almost anything you're doing, anything work-wise. It helps you to write better emails. It helps you to write better marketing assets. So, you know, creative writing is just a really good skill to have and develop. You also have with fiction, you also have to plan in detail and structure, and that is a very good skill to take back into other areas. And writing fiction gives you kind of wider horizons and enables you to see beyond, where you are now. You always come out of writing a novel with a different view of the world, more knowledge, more experience, even though it might not be experience in the real world. And you have improved communication from writing dialogue, from being able to go into, other characters' minds. You also learn to see how other people work, and it gives you an opportunity to have better relationships in all sorts of ways. So writing fiction, although it may not be a piece of certified CPD, or something you come out of with a certificate, whatever you do come out of it, and you might, not even kind of publish your novel, but actually writing fiction is a really amazing piece of self-development. Let me tell you how I started my fiction career. It didn't have a very auspicious start. I have always, I mean, since I was small, I always wanted to be a writer. And to me, a writer meant a novelist. That's what I kind of imagined in my head that, when I was young, that's what I would do. I also sort of, as a teenager, I also wanted to be an actress, but that's another story. But I mean, they're not unrelated. It's still all about characters and plot and things. But that's what I really wanted to do, to write novels, to write books that people read and escaped into. And I didn't feel that I ever got the chance to do that. Or, I mean, sometimes I tried when I was younger to start a novel, but I never felt that I actually had much to talk about. I didn't have a story. And then in my early 40s, I felt there was something that happened in my life that I could really turn, that was sort of significant enough, and I had enough story to it to turn into fiction. So I started writing my first draft of a first novel, and I just sort of poured, I didn't do any planning, I just poured out what was in my head. By this time, I'd written a couple of business books. And I thought, well, I'm not going to, I'm going to do this differently. This is creative writing. It's a whole different thing. I'm just going to pour it out. So I wrote a full first draft of, what I thought was a really exciting and maybe cutting edge sort of novel. And I sent it off to an agent I knew, a literary agent I knew. And I thought, oh, she'll probably take ages. I probably won't hear for months. But she got back to me in a couple of weeks. And in those days, it was, a packaged up a manuscript in a brown envelope and sent it to her. And then she replied by letter. This was even before agents worked with emails. So I opened the letter with trembling hands. And she said, "Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you for letting me read your novel. I'm sorry to say it is both boring and unbelievable." And I was absolutely devastated. And I rang her up and I said, how can it be unbelievable? This is my life. And, this is true. This has actually happened. It's not unbelievable. And she said, you have to be aware when you're writing fiction that life and what happens in life doesn't make for a good reading experience necessarily. So I took that on board and I kind of sulked for a bit. But then I thought, yeah, I get that. I just poured out, sort of my experiences onto a page, and it wasn't going to be very interesting for anybody else to read. It had no shape or form. So what I did was I did a lot of work on structure. I read around the subject and I created a very detailed plan for a new version of this novel. And I wrote the first couple of chapters. And then, to be honest, life got in the way and I didn't write any more. It went into a drawer and I did nothing with it. But then, about a year later, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Richard and Judy's book club, or Richard and Judy on TV even. Now, this book club's still going. They're not on TV anymore. But anyway, they started their book club, and the way they publicized it was to have a first novel competition. So, this was advertised, and a couple of people who had read my new chapters said, "Oh, this is good. You should enter for this competition." So I thought, no, no, my writing's boring and unbelievable. I won't do it. And then literally the day before the entries closed, I packaged it up into another brown envelope, sent it off to them, and heard nothing for ages. So I assumed that, typically, of course, it hadn't got anywhere. But then, about 9 months later, something like that, it was a really long time, and that was, way over when they were supposed to be announcing the winner. I got a letter from Macmillan's, the publishers. And I thought, well, that's strange. Anyway, it was on April the 1st, oddly enough, so I thought maybe it's a joke. But they said, "Thank you again for your novel. You haven't won. We're sponsoring the Richard and Judy Book Club competition. Your novel hasn't won, but it's one of 10 that we really liked, and we would actually like to publish. Can we see the rest of it?" So, of course, that was the next problem. There was no rest of it. So I got in touch with them and said, "Look, I haven't actually written any more. I would really love to take you up on this opportunity. If I write it, if I take another 3 months to write it, will you wait and will you look at it?" And they said, "Yes, that's fine." So I did. I sent it into them, another brown envelope, and I next heard that they were going to publish Blood and Water, my first novel. So my first novel was published by Macmillan, and the interesting thing was, and a figure that I like repeating, is that Richard and Judy got 47,000 entries to their novel competition, and mine was one of 10 that they chose. It wasn't the winner, but they chose another 10. And Macmillan even started off a new imprint for these new first-time novels. So it just, well, I don't know what it shows, really, that you shouldn't give up, basically, even if you haven't written a brilliant novel the first time. But and then I wrote another couple of novels, and then I wrote a book called How to Write Fiction Without the Fuss, because somebody asked me to write a blog series on writing fiction, and I realized when I'd written a whole load of those that actually I could turn it into a book, so I did. And because I was running Rethink Press by then. So I went through an awful lot of ups and downs in my initial fiction journey. And I want to be able to tell you what the typical first-time mistakes that many people write in writing fiction are. And the first one, of course, is thinking that life makes good fiction. So you might have, you might have a really interesting piece of your life or event or something that you think would be a really good basis for your book, and it might well be. I'm not saying that real life isn't turnable into a novel, into a readable novel, but it probably isn't going to work exactly as it stands. You have got to follow the patterns of what makes good fiction: structure, characters, interactions, the way that the events in the process work themselves out. And you've got to make that work for the reader of fiction. And life as it stands is not usually perfectly formed. So if you are thinking of writing something around some real life experience, just be careful that you don't, just like I did, pour it out onto the page as it happens and think that will be an unputdownable read. It just might not be. So the next mistake that people make, as I did, is to rush into the writing. And especially if you've written a non-fiction book, you will know that planning is really important. If you've worked with me on a non-fiction book, you will also know that I insist or certainly advise strongly that you plan in detail before you start writing, because it's all very well to have, the idea for a detailed manuscript in your head, but when it comes to sort of writing it out and getting into, you can write chapter 1, chapter 2, by the time you get to chapter 3 or 4, it's sort of all starting to unravel a bit. So, it's really important not to rush into the writing. And the first thing you need to do before, with fiction, not so much with non-fiction, but with fiction, is that you need to take time to what I call compost. And that is to just allow your idea, your novel, your story to work itself through in your head. Don't force yourself to start writing immediately, unless you've got something you absolutely, you've been thinking about, or exactly how it's going to work. But often, you can take authors take 6 months, a year to compost sometimes, but certainly, a month or two where you're consciously allowing things to come into your head, where you're allowing your subconscious to um, uh, throw things up, where characters start to develop. You see things in the news or in life and you think, oh, that would work. That's interesting. That's a useful. So composting is a really important start with fiction writing. And then the next mistake, as I have told you that I've made, is not doing the planning and structuring. And with fiction, which is much longer than most business books, so a typical novel, as I've said, is 80 to 90,000 words. You really need to plan and structure, especially if it's your first one. I mean, there are what are known in the fiction world as planners and pantsers. And planners plan everything out beforehand, and pantsers fly by the seat of their pants and say they have no, they don't plan at all in advance. I think you can tell that even in successful and, well-known novelists. I think you can tell when somebody hasn't planned. But if you are writing your first novel, I think it's really essential to do it. You can internalize the planning process later, and you might not need to externalize it into an actual structure, but not planning and structuring is often the downfall of actually finishing a book, and not getting a really satisfying piece of work out there. And then another mistake that first time writers make is about doing a lot of telling. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened kind of writing, instead of showing it through scenes, through dialogue, through interaction, through description. And that's something I work on. Really, we go into some sort of detail with that in first time female fiction. And then finally, I think one of the things that stops people getting on with their fiction and making mistakes is working alone. I think we all have this idea that, a creative writer, a fiction writer, sits alone in their garret and in a lonely way types or scribbles or whatever their book, and it's all very kind of personal, and creativity is very singular. But actually, that's a mistake too. And if you don't have people to hold you accountable, to read and report, people to talk to, that will often be a reason why people, their first time novels never get finished. So how to do it right? So first, I think the important thing is to clarify your own intentions. When you're starting to write fiction, what do you want to get out of it? It might not be that this is, a whole new big career move, but if it is, be sure that that is actually what you want to do. If it's just something you're going to do for your own enjoyment, be clear about that too. That's important. And then your intentions will give rise to goals and perhaps timings for what you want to do. So, a bit of clarity about why you're doing what you're doing is important. It's a good idea to start by understanding the fiction landscape. So don't just sort of write into the ether, but understand that genre is really important in terms of who your readership are, how you're going to sell your book, how it's going to be distributed. If there isn't a shelf with the type of book that your novel is, a shelf with that name on it, where is a bookseller, or in, online or offline, where are they going to put it? And also knowing a bit about how you can get published, and the outcomes that you can expect from fiction. So it's good to understand where you're positioning yourself in this new landscape, in this new market that you're potentially entering. So also, start by creating a story Bible, and take some time over that. Don't just sort of, again, rush into deciding, oh, this is going to happen and this is a structure. That again is is something that takes a bit of composting as well. I'm just going to show you what structuring can look like. So, for the novelists who do plan in detail first, I think it really shows up. I mean, whatever you think of J.K. Rowling, her novels are absolutely her Harry Potter novels and her adult novels, her Robert Galbraith novels are absolutely meticulously and so detailedly plotted. And I think that's what makes them an incredibly satisfying experience. This is Joseph Heller's outline for Catch 22. Very, very meticulous here. Who knows what all those said, but the detail of the plotting is clear. This is what Sylvia Plath's structure for the bell jar looked like. I mean, maybe not very understandable to everybody else, but she had a very clear idea in her head. She did that work in advance. And William Faulkner did his plotting for the fable on the wall of his office. To be honest, it looks like a bedroom, but still, perhaps he had a bed in his office. But that's how he plotted, and that's actually rather a nice idea of having it, like physically around you. But what we do in first-time female fiction is use cards, a card system that you might think looks familiar if you have worked with me on a business book. But it's also works very well for plotting, for fiction as well. And these are some of the ones on the left, and at the bottom are some of the real plotting work that was done, structure work that was done by the writers on last year's first time female fiction. So it really is important to do that work in advance, especially on your first novel. So going back to how you can start your novel right. So you need to plan your plots and subplots. The issue with creative writing that's very different to non-fiction writing is that you have a main plot and then you almost certainly have one or more other subplots, and they have to kind of weave in and out of each other. So you've really got to get those right. How often they interact, how they come together in the end. It's something that's really worth getting in place before you start the writing in detail. And then, of course, and again, this may be familiar to you, develop a writing habit. If you want to actually get your book finished, develop a writing habit, whether it's daily, weekly, whether you do a certain amount of words a day or a certain amount of time a day. But if you don't do that, you're very likely to give up on it. A writing habit is the way that, professional writers write. And then finally, I would say that, the other thing that will help you get this done is to work with others. And I would say this, wouldn't I? But, ideally work with an expert who can hold you accountable, who can give you answers when you have questions, who can support you and understands the process. And also, I just think working in a group of other people going through the same experiences as you in writing your first novel is unbelievably helpful, and really, really supportive. So, how to make sure you finish your novel, as I say, these are so working with other people, with a group, these are some of the outcomes of last year's first time female fiction group. There's a couple of the manuscripts that are, either finished or pretty much finished. And you can work anywhere. So, people can be, you can be on holiday and work and it's still fun. You can be wherever, but that's how to make sure you actually get your novel finished, is to follow the steps of a program, essentially. I would advocate working with a professional, and in this case, it's me, somebody who's actually written novels, but also understands how to mentor new writers through a process. And working with the group, I have to say, this isn't really the greatest shot. We all look pretty miserable there, but actually, this group was such a fantastic group to work with. They all made great friendships. They were all incredibly supportive of each other, and they gave each other superb feedback when people shared some of their writing or their structure or whatever, or ideas in the group. They got fantastic feedback from their other group members. So I really do think it's a very enjoyable way to dip your toe into creative writing. So just to tell you how you can get published, there are, of course, as ever, different ways to get published. The first one of the first steps you can take is to try and find a literary agent if you're looking to make a career or a side hustle out of writing fiction. A literary agent can be a good way to go, because some publishers, especially the bigger publishers, will not accept unsolicited manuscripts. So traditional publishers often want you to come through an agent. So on First Time Female Publishing, we talk to an agent. They come on and do a session, so you understand how you can find them, how you can sell yourself to them, and also what traditional publishers want. Now, as the founder of Rethink Press, which is a hybrid publisher, you might think I would suggest that that would be a good way to publish your novel. It isn't. You absolutely do not want to go near hybrid publishing for fiction. A hybrid publisher of business books is able to help you write a book that will build your business, but that is not through the sales, trade sales, retail sales of your book. It's through using your book to sell other services from your business, to make you a key person of influence, to build your authority. That is not what you are, as that is not going to work as a fiction writer, as a fiction author. Your product as a fiction author is your novels. You need to sell, if you're going to want to make money out of this, you need to sell copies of your book. That is your business. So don't think about hybrid publishing as a good way to go for fiction. Self-publishing is really, really, you can really make this work for you as a fiction author. If you can't or don't want to, choose not to be published by a traditional publisher, then there are really good ways of self-publishing fiction. You do have to really work at the PR, but then you do anyway. Even a traditional publisher will expect you to take responsibility for your own marketing and PR. They'll do a certain amount for you, but self-publishing is easy to do. It does cost a bit. You do have to have an editor. You do have to have a cover designer, but that's probably, the main extent of it when you're self-publishing. And then, of course, you can get assisted self-publishing, So, you can find somebody else to help you kind of manage and project manage the publication side of things. But if you are going to kind of look on fiction publishing as something you want to do, either as a career or a side hustle, then you might want to learn to do it yourself, because it's nothing like as difficult and complicated, in fact, as publishing business books, because novels are, in turn, the publishing area, much simpler. You just need one editor, one cover designer. The rest kind of looks after itself. So that's what I wanted to cover today. I wanted to enthuse you about the idea of trying to write fiction, and giving creative writing a go, and how writing a big piece of work, like a novel, it doesn't feel like hard work. I mean, sometimes it does, of course, but it's such an enjoyable and fun thing to do if you've got your ducks in place, if you've done your composting, if you're working from a good structure, you've got your characters fleshed out beforehand, you know what your setting is, what the premise for your book is. There's so many things that when you've got them in place, it makes the writing really comparatively easy. So, if you would like to join me and 9 other women on first time female fiction, there are a few places left. I always find with this program that loads of people suddenly want to sign up at the last minute, and really Friday is technically the deadline, because we start next week. On Wednesday, the 31st of January. So you've got a little bit of time, but there are people who are suddenly starting to say, oh, I think I'm going to join you on this. I think I'm going to join this one. And that's why I wanted to, but I just need to know a bit more first. And that's why I wanted to talk to you in the group today about what it might include. So it's a 12-month creative writing program. The first 6 months is front loaded with all the detail stuff. Think about the characters, the setting, the structure, the hero's journey, thematically underpinning your story. All those sorts of things are we meet every 2 weeks for the first 6 months, and you can do as much work or as little work. Last year we had I think there were probably 6 or 7 written, not almost or totally finished first drafts by the end of the year. And there were a few people who simply came to the sessions, enjoyed them, gave great feedback, thought about some ideas, but didn't actually do any writing at all. But I think they may well do later. So there's no kind of timetable. I don't force you to do anything that you don't want to do, but I'll certainly give you accountability if you want to achieve certain things in a certain time. So as I say, it's about writing your first novel or just enjoying learning. And with a knowledgeable, supportive coach, I think that's fair to say that I am both of those things. And I really love working with women, with a group of women, to support them through writing a piece of fiction. I just find it unbelievably satisfying, creative for me, and fun for everybody. And just having a group of women companions on this journey with you is everybody has found it just so positive. And if you go to the landing page for First Time Female Fiction, you'll find that they have said really lovely things about the program, but also about the companionship and the group as well. So, as I say, it starts on Wednesday, the 31st of January. We have calls every other Wednesday at 7:30 in the evening. I used to say they were 90-minute calls, but they have tended always to go on for a couple of hours. But, you can come and go as you want. But they are on a Wednesday evening, almost all of them. And if you can't make, I mean, nobody can make every call. They're recorded in the Facebook group, and you can listen to them later. And the slides that I take you through on the calls are also posted in the Facebook group, so you don't lose any of the learning. So if you want to have a look, go to ABOO Fiction, www.aboofiction.com, and you can message me, or if you've got any other questions. But hopefully, you're here now. I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody has got any questions. Right, let me just make sure I'm going to be in the right place when I come back. So I oh, that's just looking at your questions now. Yes, Marianne says she needs to leave. It's been really insightful and inspiring. Great. Well, if anybody has got any questions, I don't know if any others came up. Michaela, I think you're there. If anybody's got any questions, please do put them in the comments, and I'll happily answer them now. If you want to contact me later, and drop me a message or leave a comment here later, that is absolutely fine. Or I'm happy to jump on a quick call and chat you through anything that is that you're not sure about. So, okay, I can't see any comments coming up. Just give you a couple of seconds just in case anybody has anything they want to ask. Oh, hang on there. Yes, so Rachel. I like that one, Michaela. Rachel says, if you self-publish, does that mean you cannot go through a publisher later? No, not at all. It doesn't mean that at all. Lots of self-published authors fiction authors get picked up by publishers. So it can absolutely go through a really it can start you off self-publishing. And if you make, I mean, what traditional publishers are looking for are sales of books. So, if they see you as an author are selling, a book is selling really well. If you, for instance, I mean, BookTok, the kind of book area of TikTok, is a great place for publishers to see you. I mean, there are authors who have absolutely made their names there, got massive followings on BookTok talking about their books, absolutely picked up by traditional publishers. So Rachel, no, you can absolutely do that, and they may well pick up your self-published books and want to republish those, which tends not to happen with a business or a self-help book. So our non-fiction book. So I really like Michaela's question. How can I tell the difference between composting and procrastinating? I think it's about doing it consciously. So, if you set yourself a couple of months, or, just a month, or a couple of weeks, or whatever it is, to say, I'm composting, I'm thinking about this, I'm allowing my subconscious to work on this. If you start sort of if it's starting to take an awful long time and you're not doing any writing, or thinking about actually planning or doing anything more, then then you're then you can start telling yourself that you may be procrastinating. And actually, I think basically you probably know the difference. Yeah. So, Debbie, so I'm really looking forward to working with you, Debbie. So you're saying if we're unsure of what we want to do, you better come in with a couple of ideas to discuss. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're not absolutely certain which way, we can completely discuss it in the group. You will find that the other group members have very great feedback, supportive ideas. So yes, and I'd be more than happy to say, maybe both your ideas are great, but do this one first. This is the one that's going to get you going, attract the most attention at this point. So yes, absolutely, you can come to the group with a very clear idea of what you want to do, a couple of possibilities, or no idea whatsoever. All of that is completely fine. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing. There are 3 spaces left at the moment. One person hasn't actually signed up, so there could be 4, but I think there are 3. yes, if you would like to join up, do have a look at the landing page now. Michaela might put the, if she hasn't already, because I can't see all the comments, might put it in the comments. Have a look, read through it. You can sign up, there and then, right now, and then that place will be gone. Or you can, as I say, drop me a message or ask if we can have a quick call. I'm happy to do that. But I know that, this is always the week where people who have been composting their idea of possibly writing fiction this year have been thinking about it and suddenly go, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so I think that the by the end of the week I would expect that it will be filled up. Rachel, we haven't the in-person meetups. We didn't meet up in person last time, but the last year, but the group is planning to meet up in person. When I say in person, I kind of mean like the Zoom calls. They're live Zoom calls that every 2 weeks. But I'm not against the idea of meeting up in person. I think that's actually physically in person. I think that's a great idea. So a day somewhere or half a day somewhere chatting could be a really nice addition to the group. So thank you for that. Okay. Oh, I was going to say something else and I can't remember what it was. Yeah, I think writing fiction is something that a lot of people have kind of had as a possible something that they might like to do at some point. Very, I mean, I just think a lot of people, especially women, feel that this is something that they might like to do. And it's actually scary to commit to it. And I really do Rachel, Yorkshire. Yeah, that sounds fun. Great. And you'd happily host. Excellent. Well, let's if you join up, I mean, I would love to have you in the group. Please do sign up and then let's organize a get together. Debbie is also in the group, so I think yeah. That sounds great. I've had a couple of people I've spoken to about it who just simply said, I'm really scared. I'm scared to sign up. I'm scared to commit to this. What's expected of me? What if I'm no good at it? What if I can't do it? I mean, basically, it doesn't matter. There's nothing scary about joining this program. You will enjoy it whether you get a whole novel written in the year or whether you don't. It's not, this is not like school. As I said, it's not a piece of, CPD. It's not an exam you have to pass or, a program you get a certificate for. You will get out of it what you want to get out of it. And you might start something. Somebody who was on the program last year started a novel, wrote for about 6 months, and then suddenly realized this was the wrong novel for them. And they started, they came up with an absolutely brilliant, different idea and restarted on that. But they'd got all the underpinning in place, the knowledge, the about, how to structure, how to make characters, where the setting fitted in, all those sorts of things. So I think, it will work whatever happens. And, I'm just here to facilitate you going through an enjoyable learning process. And that might be all you want to do. So you can't fail, basically. There's nothing to be scared of because it is simply it's kind of committing to having a good and interesting time. And you don't have to come out with any particular outcome. So, okay, I think I will stop waffling on now and let you get on with your day. But thank you very much for being here. And if you're watching the recording on Catch Up, please do ask any questions in the chat, and of course I will answer them. Okay, so great to have seen those of you I have seen, as it were, and answered your questions, and I look forward to seeing some of you on the programme on First Time Female Fiction, which I am really looking forward to starting on Wednesday next week. A brand new group, brand new books, new ideas, lots of fun. Okay, I will see you then. Bye.